So I'm in turn 2 here of Deadly Northern Lights, The Gates of Fire, the first scenario, Thin Red Line games. The first NATO turn was largely administrative, where we were moving fleets and ships and troops on naval displays and on the location map, but not really doing anything much on the board. The only really significant thing that happened was some an armoured battalion, Norwegian armoured battalion, reinforced this airbase here to make that a much more difficult proposition for the Russians to attack, Warsaw Pact to attack. So not much went on, and we're in turn 2 where things are happening. So the Soviets have set up a convoy path now. You can see these pink counters. This is their convoy route around through the Barents Sea down into Tromsø. Then we've had a phase of setting up or putting down markers where we'd like to contest air superiority. The Warsaw Pact went first, put one in here. NATO put one in here, trying to set up an area where they had some sort of air control, where they could base British ships, and they put an anti-submarine surveillance in there as well. And the Russians then went over here because they want air superiority in an area, because they're looking to airdrop some powers into this altar village or town here for some more points. So what we've got now then was what we then had was the allocation of aircraft into the air superiority areas for surveillance. The Russians tried to block off the arrival of British ships, or at least allow some detection of them as they arrived, with naval and air, anti-submarine surveillance areas here and here. Of course, they've got big groups of submarines here and here, so they're trying to set up a situation where it's very difficult for NATO to get naval forces or any forces into the area without it being spotted and they're then attacked. NATO trying to establish some air control here and put an anti-submarine warfare marker down as well. And the thing about air superiority is that if you've got it, the other side can't have anti-submarine or naval surveillance in that area. So these aren't being contested from the point of view of air power, and actually the NATO dropped an anti-submarine in here as well. But if the Warsaw Pact can take control of this area in terms of air superiority, because it doesn't matter who put the marker in, you can contest it. So if the Warsaw Pact decided if they could take air superiority here, they could deny this anti-submarine detection, which would be helpful for them if they wanted to then move submarines in to attack. So yeah, this is kind of coming to the boil. So we've got the Warsaw Pact decided to throw some fighters in there and contest it. Now they wanted to make sure they had control of the 2 areas that they'd put markers down in. So they committed, fighters within range to those 2 areas to make sure they've got fighter patrols over Tromsø and the area that they want to airdrop into. So they've got 4 fighters flying at extended range out over the Norwegian Sea here. So the way this works is if you each type of mission has a radius and that's how many megahexes you can fly from your base to get there. And if you fly within that number, as these 2 F-16s did from Bodo, then you are at normal range. For air superiority, it's 4 megahexes. If you're up to double that, or if you're at double that, then you're at extended range, and you go in the extended range box, and beyond double that isn't allowed. Extended range means that your strike and air-to-air combat numbers are reduced by 2, but your evasion number stays the same. So this is air-to-air combat, evasion, ground strike, or strike value. So yeah, 12, 11, 4, but that will now be 10, 11, 2, although the strike number won't be used here because we're in air-to-air combat. So these guys have got 10, 11, 2. These guys are 7, 7, 0, 7, 7, 0, 7, 7, 0. These are at full values, 12, 10, 4. The Warsaw Pact will have bonuses for outnumbering the F-16s 2 to 1. So normally what would happen is you would set these up on a track without your opponent seeing. Normally you allocate these without your opponent seeing. You have to just use some common sense and make some plans when you're playing solo. This is the one part of the game that really has some hidden information in it, this allocation of aircraft, and then the allocation of aircraft to this air superiority combat track. But it's very straightforward here because we've got 2 F-16s, so the which will be in 1 and 2. So there's no way the NATO forces could do some second guessing or anything. So what's going to happen is we're going to get combat between these two sides. We're going to get 2 F-16s in here. Obviously the Warsaw Pact are going to allocate their best fighter up against one of the F-16s. The other one's going to have to get a fairly mediocre Su-15TM rather than an Su-27. But they decided to go for it. They decided to see if they could use the fact that they outnumber the enemy to get an edge here. And this is fairly, this might look like just a small combat, but this is fairly critical. This is currently NATO's only real air units. If they lose one, they're in all kinds of trouble. And actually, if they can't get air superiority here and protect their forces a bit better with some anti-sub surveillance, they could be in trouble or they're in more danger of submarine attacks, and their naval units are in danger, and it all gets rather unpleasant because their naval units will also suffer greater detection, and it will just get pretty messy for them. We'll get to that as the naval units come on board. Anyway, we've got this air-to-air combat to roll out, and essentially you match up your attack against the opposing unit's evasion, and you get either a positive or a negative outcome, and then you roll a d20 on a table for the result. Let's see if I can find it quickly and show that to you on camera. But I've lost the page for air-to-air combat handling. Here we go. Here's the air combat table. So you can see you've got values from -4 up to +4, and a d20 roll down the side, and then you get enemy planes aborted, enemy planes damaged, enemy planes destroyed. So yeah. Destroyed is red, damaged is black, and then an abort column as well. So I'm just going to check I'm doing this correctly. I can also show you some combat modifiers. We'll have some pilot ratings that will modify things. The Norwegians are pilot rating 2, the Warsaw Pact are also 2, so the Soviet Union are 2, so that won't change anything. There are no electronic warfare squadrons involved or ECM squadrons involved, but the Warsaw Pact will have numerical air superiority, so they will get a +2 on their dice rolls, while the Norwegians will get a -2. However, the Norwegians have got 12 air-to-air combat against an 11 evasion, so they'll be rolling on the +1 column with a -2, whereas the Soviets will be rolling on the 12, 10 to 10, the 0 column with a +2, but most of their planes will be rolling on the minus, I think the -3 column with a +2. Let's see how this goes, and I'll come back with the results. Well, good dice for the Russians there. Allowed them to maintain control of that air superiority area, so they've actually got control of the skies over all 3 air superiority areas. The Norwegians lost a step of F-16s and had the other unit of F-16s aborted. The Soviets had the Su-27s aborted. They lost steps on the other 2 units and had a 3rd step damaged, but they don't care. They've whittled away a little bit of Norwegian air power, and they've still got control of the skies. So now it's into the Soviet turn, and we've got to figure out how they're going to press their advantage. Okay then, Deadly Northern Lights, Thin Red Line games. A recap of the second Soviet turn then in the gates of fire here, this first scenario. Our big stacks of submarines here and here. They're slow submarines, they have 6 movement points, and it costs 6 movement points to put your put a ship on patrol, which is the status it needs to have to make interception attempts when the enemy are moving. So the points where they got to is where we had to put them on patrol. I'd have liked to have got these into here and got them on patrol there, but I couldn't, because that would have formed a sort of blockade against enemy shipping coming into the area. But you can still intercept from 1 megahex away, so you know, if the NATO naval forces try and get in here, we can intercept with both these groups actually. So we've still got plenty of options. So they went on patrol. We airdropped into Alta here and took that. We did some ground strikes against this garrison unit here, put a hit on it, and some interdiction. You can see this 20 movement, it'll cost it 20 extra movement points to move. I've not seen that in a game before, I don't think. Maybe I have, but not for a long time anyway. So that's interesting, that you can use airstrikes to make it more difficult for the things you're airstriking to move around. That's a cool concept. Not that they want to, because they're currently garrisoning an airbase that they want to hold on to, but you know, might be interesting in other situations. Anyway, buoyed by that success, we airdropped some special forces in and tried to seize the airfield with those, and they failed and were defeated in combat and took a hit themselves. And then over here, we've moved our front supply head up here with some garrisons, so we can now get supply further across the board. That put these guys in supply. They moved down with some artillery. This mechanized regiment with some artillery as backup attacked into here after some airstrikes, and put some hurt on this garrison battalion out here in the middle of nowhere. So beyond that, we didn't have a lot more to do. We've got our convoy running into Tromsø, and we're kind of set. So we're going into the NATO turn. It's the flow of the game's got a nice puzzly or freewheeling kind of feel to it, in that you don't get into this sort of action sequence and have to do an artillery phase and then a helicopter phase and then an airborne phase and then an artillery phase and then a ground move phase and then a airstrike phase and then a blah blah blah. You just do whatever you like whenever you like, which gives it a really nice feel. You know, you can ground strike some guys and then see an opportunity to put an airdrop mission in and go for it. You know, you don't have to have followed a really strict sequencing, and I like that. It gives the player freer, looser feel where you can see opportunities, or opportunities can open up and you can try and grab them, and that was lovely. So I liked that. And yeah, the NATO now have to go, and they have a really significant problem in that they have no way to get supply to British troops onto this map now, because they need supply coming into Tromsø, and Tromsø's occupied, and in order to attack Tromsø they need units in supply, and they can't get supply into the area because they need the port of Tromsø. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place. The best thing I can see they can do is destroy the convoy that's bringing in supplies, so that the defenders of Tromsø are as out of supply as they are, and then that would kind of level the playing field. But as it stands, an attack against Tromsø would be pretty much doomed to failure, because there's quite a tough brigade in here, and the British haven't got anywhere near the strength to attack that with sort of scattered battalions and stuff that they're bringing in. The only other option they've got is to try and combine those battalions into a brigade, which they can do, but it's going to take time, and they're going to have to find a spot where they can make some sort of amphibious landing, and it's very hard around Tromsø because this is all Arctic Rough 2, and you can't do amphibious landings there. So again, this spot here might be the best spot for an amphibious landing, but it's in another megahex away from this one, and it's difficult to get there. So yeah, there's some real trouble brewing for NATO here. It may be that they have to put in some sort of amphibious landing down in here and walk round, but that, you know, out of supply, that's going to be very difficult as well. So yeah, tough choices for NATO here, and that's assuming they can get through the Russian subscreen. So one thing we have got to do here is we've got an anti-submarine warfare surveillance chit down here, and that's a sort of abstract representation of, you know, air patrols and, you know, small craft, patrol craft and corvettes and smaller vessels than are represented by the destroyer and frigates and so on in the game, all sort of patrolling a particular area within range of a naval base or an air base. What that allows us to do is make an intercept attempt against a single sub. So we're going to pick one of these subs. If there's anything particularly better than anything else in here, we'll pick that, but there isn't. These are all the same. So we'll just pick this top submarine. We'll make a quick die roll to see if we can intercept it. In other words, to see whether one of our sort of patrolling aircraft or patrol boats picked that submarine up and was able to then get an attack on it. So we'll do that quickly. The naval interception chart is down here. You generally need a 13 plus. The target is a submarine, but it is in a friendly anti-submarine warfare area, and these submarines are all detection level 0, so that will be a -2 on the dice roll. So we basically need a 15 or better on a d20. If we get that, we will be able to make some sort of attack against that submarine. So let's just give it a quick roll. And we've got a 2, definitely not detected, and so we're now going to carry on into the NATO turn. And what's going to happen is some NATO shipping is going to start turning up here. They're going to be in a naval surveillance area, and these adjacent patrolling submarines are going to start being able to try and make intercept attempts against them should they wish. So things are about to get very heated very quickly. So in the NATO turn, we had a British task force turn up in this megahex on the south edge of the map. and the Russian subs tried to intercept. They used active emissions, which I think means active sonar, to try and improve their chances of interception. But only 2 subs managed to intercept. Both of them engaged in combat with the task force and just ended up with a damaged sub for their troubles. Didn't manage to inflict any damage on the British ships. So then the second task force turned up. Both task forces dropped. Were able to do amphibious landings to drop the troops they were carrying off here. I had been planning to try and get them into this airbase using helicopters, seeking helicopters from the carrier, but it didn't look like the capabilities of the ships allowed troops to be helicoptered directly off them. It looked like you had to do amphibious landings with them. They had a blue helipad symbol rather than a white. Only the carrier had a white, and the carrier didn't have any transport capacity, so the troops weren't on them. So as far as I could tell, I needed to land the troops somewhere and then heli them off. So for now they are stuck here in the middle of nowhere. We will try and get them over to this airbase using helicopters when we can, but of course that will allow the Soviets to adjust their air allocation next turn, and they might prevent us from doing that. We could walk if we wanted to, but that's going to be a slow slog with no supply. So there it is. Other than that, the other thing that happened was that a Dutch contingent of reinforcements turned up, created a task force. They're now sailing for the area as well. And that was pretty much it. Yeah, the damaging of a single submarine and no losses on the to the British task forces was the outcome of the turn. So going into turn 3, I think the British plan is now to try and hunt down Russian convoy ships and see if they can't intercept some of those and do some damage to them, and cut the Tromsø supply line. If they can accomplish that, then we can think about how we get troops over there to try and contest the naval base. So let's see how this goes in turn 3. But so far it's really engaging play. Really enjoying the relatively low counter density, the planning, the thought, and the rules are pretty cool. The only downside I've found so far is the graphic design on the counters, which leaves a lot to be desired in many cases, but I don't want to dwell on that in this video. I'm trying to enjoy the gameplay and present the gameplay. The counters are an issue, but that's for another time perhaps.